Is this the best QB draft class in years, and how does Caleb Williams compare to previous prospects? We'll take a look at some of those things and more here as we dive into the ADP Average Dudes podcast. I'm your average dude, Matt Mormann. A little bit of a different setup here as we're on the road paying some bills here. So I got to hold this microphone here because I forgot to pack my usual one that I record on whenever I'm recording my own stuff. So I got to use my work microphone here. Yep, nope, I'm right. I didn't pack it. We are going to take a look at the quarterbacks. Now, this is a kind of a quick overview of the position. This is not a true deep dive. We're going to break these players down more and more as we get into the upcoming weeks and months here before the NFL draft in late April. These are kind of my first impressions. And we're going to go through each position over the next couple, probably over the next week or so. We'll see when I get around to recording all those positions. But I did get a chance to look at every quarterback that I deemed worthy of being potentially fantasy relevant this season or in the future, right, for the rookie draft for Dynasty. So we're going to take a look at them. We're going to start right up the top, right? We're going to start with Caleb Williams. My big positives for Caleb Williams, he is very creative, right? He is a player who I don't like using Patrick Mahomes as a comparison to players because I think that really sets a bar too high. But it does look like Mahomes a little bit sometimes where it's spin around, chuck it deep, right? That's a little bit of what Caleb Williams has sometimes, and he has the athletic tools to pull that off. With his cannon of an arm, he's got modern mobility, which I like to see that. These days I don't want to see a Matt Ryan type of quarterback. They don't have to be Lamar Jackson, but I want that modern mobility. He has that, and he's very creative. He can throw off platform. He has, can do all the arm slots. There's a lot to like there. There's a reason why we've known this guy for like 2 years in dynasty circles as being the top pick come 2024. And a lot of that shows up, especially if you look at his 2022 film, right? I started out kind of looking at 2023 first, and there's some regression there for sure this past year. Definitely a little bit of hero ball, a little bit of trying to do too much. And that's kind of the double-edged sword of that creativity, right? It's his biggest positive. I think it is also his biggest negative. Sometimes when you try to create, there's nothing to be created. And it's going to turn into holding the ball too long. It's going to hold on to forcing throws deep down the field that maybe you shouldn't force. I think sometimes Caleb Williams gets a little bit bored with the underneath throws. I think sometimes he decides, I don't want to take that 4-yard completion. I want to try to make the 24-yard completion. It's me playing Madden is kind of what it is sometimes. And I think at the next level, he's going to learn a hard lesson with that, especially as defenses go more and more into this cover 2 shell defense, more and more that zone coverage that takes away the big play. I think Caleb Williams is going to have some struggles with that. All that being said, to say this, though, he's a great prospect. He's absolutely deserving of being the number one player. He is the guy. I compare him to very much a Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford combo. I think if you kind of can join those two players, that's kind of who you get. I don't think he's quite Kyler Murray for the rushing. I think that he is Kyler Murray a lot in the passing game, though. And I combine that with Matthew Stafford a lot, right? I think those two are both very similar in that regard. And so that's kind of my comparison for him. I think he's absolutely the first overall pick in the draft this year. I think the Bears do move on from Justin Fields to get that done. And obviously we'll talk more and more about that if and when it happens. I think he's probably the number one pick in Superflex drafts. We will get to a guy here in a minute who I think is very compelling as well as the first pick for fantasy purposes. You got to remember, this is a YouTube channel about fantasy football. And for fantasy purposes, I think Jayden Daniels is going to give him a real run for his money. Obviously, in one QB dynasty leagues, Marvin Harrison Jr. vaults up to the top there just for positional need purposes. But overall, yeah, no, he's awesome. I do think he's more where I had Stroud a year ago. Not where I had Trevor, not where I had Burrow in the past. More of where I felt about CJ Stroud around this time last year. All right, let's talk about Jayden Daniels here, the quarterback at LSU. And watching his film, it's fun. It's a blast, absolute blast. I think he is a better passer than I think he gets a lot of credit for. I think a lot of people kind of really ding him for his passing ability. But I think he's okay at it. The lack of turnovers is really impressive to me because not just last year, but I cannot remember who I heard the stat from. maybe I even just saw it on Twitter. If I can find it, I'll put it up on screen. He had a 1.6% career turnover worthy play rate. That is astronomically low. That's amazing. And so you love to see that. So it's not just a guy out here throwing bombs, taking chances, turning it over, but also big plays. It's a guy who's taking care of the football. And that's really impressive to me. Now, I do think some of that also comes from the fact that if it wasn't there, he then just runs, right? So you do lack turnover-worthy plays when you just run the ball, right? That's an easy way to take care of it. From his rushing side, it's everything you think it is. It's everything that you have heard from other people. He is a Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson level athlete. He is at that level. I'm very excited for the combine to see where his numbers rank. Because last year, Anthony Richardson really broke the combine. He really wrecked that thing and just absolutely ruined records. And so I'm excited to see how Daniels matches up with that. I quit watching his run plays. I was watching film and some highlights here, and I quit watching his runs because once I saw he tucked it in, I was just like, I don't even need to see any more of this. I'm not going to waste more time. Just skip ahead because I knew it was going to be something great. So I didn't even bother with that. On his negatives, he did have these mega elite wide receivers at LSU, right? Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas are two players we're going to talk a lot about over the next couple of months here. Malik Neighbors in particular, he's probably going to be a top 10 at worst NFL pick. He might be higher than that. So he definitely had that help. We've seen that go both ways when it comes time to get to the NFL, right? Sometimes that means the quarterback benefited from those guys in college. Sometimes they're fine, right? Joe Burrow had Jefferson and Chase, and he's pretty darn good on his own too. So that can go either way. A couple other negatives for him are just that he's an older prospect. It took a long time to break out, and we don't like that. We like to see players break out at young ages, and he really didn't do it until his 5th year in college. So that's definitely a bit of a concern there as well. And the fact that it's kind of lackluster, he really wasn't much of an NFL prospect just like a year ago right now. Talented athlete even at that point in time, but he just hadn't put it together at all as a passer. And so that really kind of kept him off the board. He has a very skinny frame. Anthony Richardson, he's kind of built like Cam Newton. Built like Josh Allen a little bit. He's closer to what Lamar was when Lamar came into the league. We'll see what his official weight is come the combine, but he definitely just looks skinnier. He looks like a wide receiver when he has the ball in his hands, where some of those guys look more like running backs when they have the ball in their hands. So that's a bit of something to watch out for. He definitely does not shy away from contact also. There was one play, I think it was against Alabama I watched, where the guy, he just wrecks him over the middle. So I would like to see Jayden Daniels get down a little bit more and not get too banged up here once he comes to the NFL. I expect him to be either the 2nd or 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft. I think with that rushing ability, you can make the case that he should be the first pick in Dynasty because of that upside being so high. I would like to see him go to Washington. I'm hoping to have Tanner on sometime soon. We're going to talk about that a little bit because I know Tanner is not nearly as high on the Washington landing spot as I am. But I think that'd be a great spot for him. Let's talk Drake Maye a little bit. Now, it's interesting because Caleb Williams is the guy who everybody's been talking about for 2 years. Jayden Daniels, he's the high-flying athlete. The sizzle reel is amazing with him, and he just won the Heisman. Drake Maye is kind of being forgotten a little bit in the hype, and I don't think he should be. I think he's really, really good as well. It does actually remind me a little bit of the guy who I saw on tape with him as well. My comp for Drake Maye is Justin Herbert, and it reminds me a little bit of that draft with Herbert where so much talk went into Tua and Burrow that Herbert kind of almost got forgotten about a little bit. That's kind of where I actually see Drake Maye here, and I like Maye a lot. Very live arm, modern mobility. Think of Herbert when you kind of think of his rushing ability. One thing that really impressed me watching him, he's really good running to his left and throwing. That was one thing I really liked when I was watching his videos out there. And so that's just a really nice thing to see that, you can be creative, move him in each direction. It's not a guy who's kind of forced to one side of the field. He has really good accuracy. Every throw looked like it was right where it needed to be. Kept his runners going in stride on those throws also, which is always really important as well. And he's a guy who I put down that he plays within structure, right? He's not Caleb Williams where he's going to create everything. He kind of does what the play is drawn up to be. And I put that as a positive here because I think that he does have the ability to create. We just didn't always have to see it in college. But just because of his arm and his mobility, I feel like that ability is in there. He just didn't need to do it. And instead, he just did a really good job of going through his progressions, reading his receivers, and making a play. I expect him to be the third pick in the draft, if not second, even if Washington decides to go with Maye over Daniels. And in that case, I think he is probably the third QB off the board in dynasty drafts, regardless of landing spot here. I just don't see an argument to quite put him above those two guys. For our purposes, I expect him to be right up there, though. In Superflex leagues, he'll be right up there, probably behind Marvin Harrison. That'll be team need specific. Right there with Malik Neighbors as well. To me, in Superflex draft, which most of my dynasty leagues are Superflex, the top 7 to me is a pretty locked-in set of guys, and these first 3 quarterbacks are right there in it. JJ McCarthy, the quarterback for the national champion Michigan Wolverines here. And he's a tough guy to evaluate because there's just not a whole lot out there on him because Michigan ran the ball, played good defense, and JJ was just never really asked to do a whole heck of a lot. And so because of that, I think some people really hold that against him as a guy who may not be able to do a whole lot. But I think that there's some real untapped potential there, potentially. Great sense there, Mormann. He just always looks in control, though. He reminds me a lot of an Alex Smith, right? Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe even on the downers, side of that. A game manager is definitely a tag that I think he's gonna get slapped with early on in his career. I'm not saying that's necessarily a knock, right? Like, there's only really like 6 QBs that I consider like not really be game managers. Everyone else kind of needs to play within their system and kind of needs to have an offense that is a little bit more balanced. I think the best thing I'd say about JJ McCarthy is he plays smart but not scared. He really toes this line well of knowing that he doesn't need to take chances, but takes those chances when they're presented, right? He attacks the middle of the field really, really well. He really is not afraid to throw the ball over the middle of the field and kind of throw up those 50-50s when they are just 50-50s. And his receivers got a chance to get him. Now for a couple negatives on JJ. I mentioned kind of the conservative system that he worked in, so we don't really know what he can do. The other thing is his arm strength is pretty unimpressive. He can beat me up. I'm sure he's got a stronger right arm than I do, but the ball just kind of looks like it's fluttering a little bit out of his hand sometimes, and it doesn't always drive well. When you want to see just a little bit more zip on those throws. That's something that I was really impressed with Drake Maye, was just the zip on the throws and kind of the motion there. I thought the motion for JJ was fine, but there's a lack of real zip to that ball going further down the field. And another thing, and this kind of goes into the conservative system a little bit, it did feel like every big play I saw of him was off play action. And that comes with the territory of being a run-first offense. Play action creates opportunities because the defense bites in on the fake handoff, right? But in the NFL, not every play is going to be off of a play action, fake. So that's one thing that I definitely would have liked to have seen more of, is more of just kind of him spread it out and just gun it. But that just wasn't available. So I don't know. Maybe he can do it. Maybe he can't. I don't know. He is also just a tad bit on the small side. Not short, but just skinny as well. Kind of like Jayden Daniels a little bit with that build. I expect him to be kind of more of a mid-first rounder. I would say anywhere from like 10 to 20, depending on trades potentially. I don't think he's going to quite make top 10. He could, though, because teams do get a little bit QB crazy sometimes. But I think he's more of a mid-first round guy. For dynasty purposes, I think he's more of a second-round pick. We'll see where he lands. A spot where he plays immediately or looks like he's going to play at least really soon would definitely help him out a little bit in that regard. Because, we're always wanting to play our guys quick, right? We don't want to sit around and wait for 2 years for Jordan Love. We would rather have Josh Rosen playing right away sometimes, even though that's not necessarily what we should want. So Bo Nix, definitely an older prospect here as well, from Oregon. Things I liked about him were he really did a good job with leading receivers on these RPOs, on these screens. Now, if you're kind of new to Dynasty, new to college football following even, and I myself, I am not a college football guy one bit, but even I know the Oregon Ducks system is very gimmicky, very RPO heavy, very screen heavy. And it's always kind of nerve-wracking when you get these quarterbacks and going in the NFL, because it's like a lot of their highlights are just screen passes. It's like, how much did you really do here? That's one of my big questions with Bo Nix is just like, how much was you? He's a guy, he went to Auburn first, kind of flamed out a little bit, went to Oregon, had some success. Kind of like JJ, I just didn't love the arm talent there. I thought the arm strength looked kind of weak. The ball just didn't look very good on his more downfield throws, I thought. His underneath stuff will look good. He's got quick release, too. He's got a quick flick of it. And I like that. He does have some mobility. He can run a little bit. I like that as well. My comp for him is kind of a Mac Jones with mobility. Mac Jones that can run. That's kind of what I saw here. So not great. We'll see where he goes. I expect him to probably be a second-round pick. Another guy I could see a team getting desperate for and moving up and making a move there in the second round for, or the first round rather for him. But I think he's probably a second-round guy. I'm not a big fan. Personally, I don't even know if I would really make him a second-round guy. I think he's probably more of a third-round guy. Kind of just looks like a career backup to me. So Michael Penix Jr., I actually like him a little bit more than Bo Nix, and a lot of it is just a cannon of an arm. He has got an arm. And if you remove all things from playing quarterback except for how good you are at throwing a football, if nothing else mattered, I think Michael Penix is the best quarterback in this class. But he does lack mobility. He lacks creativity. He's also an older prospect with a major injury history. And he reminds me a little bit of like an early career Kirk Cousins. I saw Jacoby Brissett as kind of a comp for him. I think that's a pretty good one as well. He has this really weird, he really rears back when he throws, like this weird arm motion. He really like comes back and hurls that ball. So I don't love that. You want guys who kind of flick it and get it out a little bit better. We got one more guy whose arm motion really impressed me coming up here a little bit later on. But I think, Penix, I think he's probably a third-round pick in the NFL draft. I think for dynasty purposes, probably also a third-round pick. I don't think he gets a starting job or a path to starting anytime soon. He's going to need to kind of luck into one a little bit here, find a quarterback that maybe goes down in front of him, or an older quarterback, or kind of open up that opportunity. But I do like Penix. I think that he could be really good in a system where decisions are made for him. Think of a Kyle Shanahan San Fran. Think of an LA Rams kind of system, right? I think he could be really good in a situation where he is just asked, throw the football. Last quarterback we're going to take a look at here, the once upon a time projected number one guy, Spencer Rattler. He had a very kind of long up and down college career to the point where even I knew about it. And I am not a college football follower. I kind of really, binge learn these prospects during this time of year, right? And even I knew about Spencer Rattler like 3 years ago. So that's the kind of level of prospect that he once upon a time was. He's the guy who, he's got this really great throw motion where it's just a quick flick and that ball comes flying out of that. I was really impressed by his arm strength. I thought that he's a really good athlete too. He can run a little bit, great arm. I was really impressed with all of those kinds of things. The physical tools, I can see why he was once upon a time the top prospect, because when you remove accuracy from the question and you remove decision making from things, he's really fun too. And like his highlights are highlights. Like it's great. But then there's the other plays though, right? There's overthrows. There's forcing throws when you shouldn't. My comps, I put he's got Baker Mayfield tendencies with a Drew Lock arm. Basically, Baker's not scared, right? Baker will throw balls into coverage like it's nobody's business. So that's Spencer Rattler here too, man. He's not scared to throw the ball into coverage, throw the ball downfield, but he's got a bit of an arm to do it though. He does. He can get away with it sometimes with just a really good throw. And then I also thought that's kind of Zach Wilson, isn't it? And so that's also kind of my comparison. And I know that really sounds like it sucks because you think about second overall pick Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, I think, is probably an okay backup quarterback, though. Like, if you slotted him in as like a fourth-round pick, like where Spencer Rattler probably might be, I think you'd be fine with the fact that Zach Wilson is like your team's backup quarterback. It's the high expectations going into it that really threw things off there. So that's kind of what I think there. The tools are really kind of something, though, with Spencer Rattler. So there's really potential to be something. Probably not. Probably nothing. But I do think he's a little bit more interesting than most quarterbacks this far down the board would be. So, guys, that's going to do it for me for the quarterback overview here. We're going to go deeper and deeper on these guys. I'm going to try to get a couple friends on here to talk about these quarterbacks and their thoughts on them, kind of get some other opinions on them as well in the coming weeks. So, guys, in the meantime, though, be sure to like and subscribe. Stick around here on the channel. We're going to go through running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends over the coming days and weeks ahead. And until then, you can check out, I did a whole series on the free agent classes. I played free agent matchmaker last week for Valentine's Day, kind of making some loving couples between players and teams. And also the other day, I decided to do a little bit of a Q&A. I took questions off of the Fantasy Football Reddit page and just kind of, want to touch base. What's the fantasy football community talking about right now? So you can check those out right here.